What is up to all the difference makers out there? We've got another phenomenal episode. I had a mentor in life once told me, as your kids grow up, you'll meet some phenomenal people just from your kids' sports, from your kids' events. And the guy we have in the studio today is an example of that. And he's never actually coached my son, but I could hear him across the field, believe it or not. And then I'd always want to get fired up and want to put a helmet on listening to him. So, and as I got to get to know him, we got connected on LinkedIn. I'm like checking out his profile and his content, and I was like, this is a guy that I need to have on. So he is a Marine combat veteran. He is an inspirer of people. And I believe this is his 12th year coaching 7th and 8th grade football.
Yeah, 10 years with BBFC, and then a few years before that coaching flag. So
okay.
Yeah.
So Dean Ditto, welcome to the studio.
Hey, thanks for having me. You flatter me. I think I think some people would disagree with how loud I am being inspiring. I get feedback from parents that, how are you talking to kids like that? And it's like, they're about to go into high school.
Yeah.
And the way I talk to the kids is a fraction of what they're going to get. Not to jump into sports too quick, but and we have in our youth football, we have 6-play rule. Everybody plays 6 plays, right? Mm-hmm. Next year, when they get into 9th grade football, you might not see the field
at all.
Period.
Yeah.
At all. And I know kids that I've coached who have played 4 years of high school football who have never gone past the practice squad. And that's fine though. They're still part of the team. They still get the benefit of being on a team. They get the benefit of a sideline. But high school becomes a meritocracy, and a meritocracy, and the coaches are going to talk to them. They're going to hold them accountable. On Friday Night Lights, if you jump off sides, you get pulled out. Somebody next man up.
Yep.
You blow the play, next man up, and it goes from there. So I tried to hold the kids accountable while still understanding that they're 13 and 14 year olds. So I'm not everybody's cup of tea as a head coach, but I've come to embrace that.
I think that does go a long ways into preparing them though, because in my son Jackson, we were just talking about as a freshman in high school, and one of the things that he liked about the coaching, he's like, they're 100% real. No one's bullshitting you. They're telling you whatever that is that they feel and whatever colorful language they feel like saying it, and he likes that.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm unabashed with honest feedback. And one of the things I do at the start of a season is I'll run a combine. Like on the first day of practice, when other teams are going through tackling drills or starting to figure out who's going to play offense, defense, I spend the entire first practice. Everybody runs multiple 40s, and we record each time. We check everybody's ball handling skills. Can you throw the ball? Can you catch the ball? We put them in a ring, and we do what's called bull in the ring sumo drill. And then I rank everybody, and the kids that are fast get a chance to carry the ball as long as they have ball handling skills. The kids that are slow, we work on developing them. But one of the things I see is that a lot of times with the kids that I decide, we'll get 6 plays. And let me be clear, that's my decision, but it's completely based on merit. Mm-hmm. Is that and let me preface this by saying I'm not shit talking any kids.
Yep.
But a lot of times these kids that are getting 6 plays have been told by their parents all the time that, oh, you're doing so good, you run so fast, oh, you're great at this, you're great at that. When in reality, they're not. Yeah. I've with my kids outside of football, I've always been honest with them. That was great. Was that the best you can do? My expectations are high. They're not unreasonably high, but I'm honest with them on their performance. If my don't give somebody positive feedback if it's not absolutely warranted, because that then becomes the bar. That
they think they did good.
They think I did great. No, you actually didn't do great. Or you think you're running fast. Oh, my mom says I'm. I had a kid that I coached. Who, mom was like, oh, he's such a fast runner, and then we ran 40s and he was like the second to the last kid. And I'm like, what makes you think he's a fast runner? And again, not shit talking any kid, but he thought he was fast too. Yeah. And when he had that, and the worst part about it is when he had that realization, and this is the first year he was playing football, probably like 4 or 5 years ago, when he had that realization that he wasn't fast, it was kind of, I'm not going to say it was devastating to him, but it was, he was like, oh, what? I don't get it. What happened, You're setting them up for failure because they're going to find out that they're not fast. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the thing is like, no matter how good, strong, fast you are, there's always going to be somebody bigger, stronger, and faster.
Absolutely. And oftentimes it's a person who wants it more and is willing to do. We were talking before, you do, I think we were saying you do the things that you can now, so you can do the things that you want later or something like that. But it kind of reminds me of the saying, everybody wants to be a gangster till it's time to do gangster shit, right?
Yeah.
You know, and the folks that are doing the gangster shit. I mean, you look at Brighton High School, there's a lot of kids that go to Mecca now. And so for folks who don't know, Mecca is a place in Novi that does personal training and nutrition guidance for athletes, both professional, college, and high school. And so when kids started going to Mecca a couple of years ago, a lot of them were like, look at you, rich boy, mom and dad are paying for a personal trainer. And they would go and they would bust their ass and they do a lot of work and they get extra reps. And to a person, every one of those kids that went to Mecca is a dude. I mean, they're really good at transforming kids and teaching them and teaching them work ethic and whatnot. And it's a matter of putting in the work, put in the work, or else don't expect the benefits, So,
yeah, it's so true. It's so true. It's like there was a post that you had that you were talking about sports, and this was, I think, along the lines of what we were talking about, is like you trick kids into thinking that you're there to teach them sports.
Yeah,
but it's really like life skills, right?
It's It's not. I'm not a football coach. I just coach a football team that's cleverly disguised as a childhood development program.
Yeah,
and and again, probably there are probably some parents that will watch this and be like, yeah, he's full of shit. But I hope that every kid that I've coached will remember me. I can guarantee you that. But I think that if I think back, every kid that I've coached is better, and I'm not. It sounds arrogant to say that, is better for having myself and the guys that I coach with hold them to higher expectations, not bullshit with them about their strengths and their weaknesses, and then just to be honest with them and teach them the life skills, that life is a meritocracy, or that you get out of it in direct proportion to what you put into it, and very clear with that. And I've had a kind of a unique opportunity at the start of the season. Because I sent so many 8th grade players to the high school last year, and I didn't get a lot of 6th grade players coming up.
Yeah,
I started the season off with 14 kids on my team that have never played tackle football before.
Wow.
Yeah, which is we're in a very competitive league.
Yep.
A lot of these kids have been playing football for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. My son included. And so I had opportunity to take kids that are new. And you can see how they kind of self-select. I've got a few kids that have really stepped up and want to do the work. And then, I've got, by way of example, I got a kid that plays safety for me. And in the game this week, he was having a great game. He had a pick. He ran it back for like 20 yards. And at one point I had to take him out because he was limping and he didn't want to come out. And I was like, fucking done my work for this kid.
Yeah.
He knows exactly what I'm selling. And then there's other kids that are, content to just show up and do the work, get their 6 plays.
Yep.
And go home.
They're happy to have the uniform on, right?
Happy to have a uniform on. And, to each one of those kids, that might be the benefit for them. Maybe they've not been in organized sports before. Maybe they don't have the drive and the gumption to get it. But that frustrates me because I think, I've said this to my team and I said, not a one of you, I actually said, not a one of you fuckers, deserves to go through life not knowing what you're capable of, either
Yes.
physically or mentally, what you're capable of, and so they need to be pushed. And some kids don't respond to the push. Some kids do respond to the push and they embrace it, and they try harder, and they want it more. Kids, I'm a big advocate of kids playing multiple sports, and the logical progression from football is next sport should be wrestling, in my opinion. Maybe some kids play basketball, but and so I've got kids that are raising their hand. How do I sign up for wrestling? And I'm like, there you go. Push yourself, get into, and wrestling will be super uncomfortable for them, especially as a new wrestler. They're going to get first week of practice, they're going to get put into a half and get rolled over and, wondering why the fuck am I here? But
Yeah.
You gut it out, you stay with that, and, you're a better person because of it,
Yeah.
I realize I probably sound like this like super hard asshole. I'm actually a big cuddly fucking teddy bear, to be honest with you.
But you talk about it being life lessons. We talk about those minimal play players. We're talking about the sport of football, and it's not just all about feel good. You put people out, and we're talking about a unit.
Yeah,
their response, like that person could get somebody hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. There's if you don't know your position or if you don't know your blocking scheme, you can easily get yourself or somebody hurt. And that has been, it's not so much a problem for me this year, but that has been a problem like that I've had to deal with a couple times in the years that I've been coaching. And I feel really strongly about that. I come from a military background, and there were guys that joined the Marine Corps and went through boot camp. Somehow, don't ask me fucking how, and then got to the unit, and they were shitbags, and the thought was the minute the shit hits the fan, this guy's going to get somebody killed, and you can't, and certainly that's an extreme metaphor for what we're talking about football, but it speaks to the accountability that you need to have to the man on your left and to the man on your right, and whether you're on the offensive line or whether you're in the backfield or whether you're in a fighting position. You should be accountable to the guy that's next to you. There's a question I asked the team: who do you play for? Each other. And that's the only answer I'll accept. And in the corollary to that is when you're in the military, who are you fighting for? You're not fighting for your country at the moment that the bullets start flying.
You're not thinking of the flag.
No, you're not thinking of the flag. You're thinking about the guy to your left, the guy to your right, and how you don't want to let them down. And hopefully you have enough trust in them for you to not be let down. And so that. That's kind of the metaphor, and that's how I apply it in youth football. So, yeah, for right or wrong, I'm retiring after this Saturday is my last game.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I'm going to go out and have a few beers on Saturday. Maybe go stand in the middle of the field and just yell at nobody who's there.
What do you do with that coaching 12 years? What does that off season look like? For you moving forward.
Oh shit. Well, so I used to coach wrestling, and then my son stopped wrestling, and that was, I took that time back. I loved coaching wrestling, though. It was a ton of fun. And then I'm an assistant coach lacrosse, but I don't know the first fucking thing about lacrosse. I got suckered into coaching lacrosse because they needed coaches. They just needed bodies on the field because you have, I think the first year I was there, they had 40 kids signed up, and they had 2 coaches. And that ratio is wrong. So they're like, hey, come coach lacrosse. And I was like, I don't know the first thing about lacrosse. I just know how to yell at kids, and I can condition them and I can discipline them. And they're like, okay, deal, done. And so I coached, and I immediately fell in love with the game. I still don't know the first thing about lacrosse, but I got inspired to go out and buy my own equipment. And I played adult league lacrosse, which was an ass kicker. But I'll coach lacrosse. And then after lacrosse season, I might be done coaching, except for the obligations I have at the high school on Friday night, which is, running the tech package. And then probably my proudest is that I'm the get back coach. And I'm the best damn get back coach in the fucking league.
What is that?
So that's the guy who makes sure that all the kids are back. Behind. Literally, you're telling people to get back. Yeah, and then and not just the kids, but the refs. The refs own that wide white stripe on the sideline.
Yeah.
Right, and they're responsible for moving up and down. And oftentimes coaches will come out. You get a sideline warning. Sometimes they'll just go right past the warning and throw a flag if the coaches are too far forward. And I think it was I want to say it was 4 years ago at Plymouth, one of the refs was running down the sideline following a play, and one of the coaches was in the way. And I think the ref knew he was there because the ref dropped a fucking shoulder and just trucked him, knocked him on his ass, and then gave us a 15-yard penalty. And if I remember correctly, that pushed us back from scoring position to we had to kick a field goal. So I'm the get back ref. I'm responsible players and coaches, no sideline penalties. And so knock on wood, so far this year we've gotten a warning, but no penalties. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super awesome.
It's a lot of fun because I don't have to do shit for it during the week. Right? Yeah. And the kids all know, hey, toes back. And sorry, coach. So. Yeah.
You're not warming up your yelling voice for that.
No. And for the most part, and they're all good kids, and it's a lot of fun. It gets me on the sidelines, and
what a fun season to be on the sidelines.
Holy shit, yeah, it is. It has been a great season. We've handled all of our opponents really well. I think we run into a little bit of a problem though, is that and you've been to the games?
Oh yeah.
All right, cool. So we have a tendency to come out, the Michigan game, the game that was at Michigan Stadium against Fordson, we came out and kicked ass. But from an observational standpoint, our team has a tendency to come out and play down to the level of the teams that are not as good as us. And so by way of example, we play Canton, right? And we can't finish that first drive, right?
Yeah.
And then Canton comes back and scores. And I think we have, and it's not a unique problem to Brighton, but I think we have a bad case of affluenza, that when we get punched in the face, we don't necessarily know what to do, and so, I see that on the sidelines. I see that with my youth team. I see that I see that with I think one of the teams that played in the Super Bowl last year, and they'd given up no touchdowns. Nobody had ever scored on them.
Yeah.
And they came in and in the first possession, they put 7 points up, and those kids were done. After that, those kids were done. You would thought somebody took their dog out and shot him in front of them.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a lesser extent in the high school, and this is just my observation. But we got a big game coming up on Saturday. And these kids are going to have to step the fuck up and come on that field ready to punch people in the fucking face.
Yep.
Because Belleville is like a Division II team, a Division II college team.
Yep.
They are legit. I think I did the math, and they've outscored their opponents like high 300s to like 60 or something like that. But
one of the games was like 71-0. It was
it was just disgustingly lopsided. But at the same time, I think we're fully capable of beating them.
Yeah.
They were a good team when we beat them to go to the state championship game a few years ago. Because I still think we have better coaching, and I think that the value proposition of our team is that our team is made up of kids that have played football together for. Some of these kids have been playing together for 12 years.
Yep.
And they instinctively know, and that they can rely back, kind of bringing it full circle. They instinctively know that they don't play for Brighton; they play for each other.
Yeah.
They play for that guy in the line that they've known since instructional football. So 12 years ago would have been 2010. They know that running back, that's been carrying that ball for the last 12 years is a dude, and he's been hitting the gym, and he's just going to fucking barrel through people. That you just need to make that block, and then he's going to get to the end zone. And I think that is our secret sauce. And I think we got to lean into it.
Well, it goes back to you, right? It goes back to that youth program. Most of these kids have played together, So I had Colby Newberg. I was coaching sixth grade basketball in. It was the Monday after they played at Ford Field, and so he came in. It was super. Oh, it was the Monday after they beat Belleville, and he came in and
he was super high, right?
What's that?
He must have been super tuned up.
If you'd ever talked to him though, back then he was just so calm.
Yeah.
Like he was just calm, and I think it was his first time speaking in front of people, and speaking in front of the kids. But like he told them that was I've known my teammates since I was your age, and we've just played together and practiced together, and we're a team. And you look at Belleville, and they recruit and they pull in these top athletes, but everybody's playing as individuals. Yeah,
they're playing to get that D1 scholarship.
Yeah,
they're playing to get that. They're playing to get potentially out of whatever circumstance they are, and they've been playing at Belleville since they convinced them to come from Detroit or Taylor or Ypsilanti or Willow Run or wherever the hell it is they come from. So. Yeah, I think I'm hoping that value proposition and that secret sauce has some weight on Saturday. It'll be a lot of fun. We got win or lose. I think the kids can set aside that little bit of affluenza because they know they got to come out and they got to dude up. And my son in particular is saying, "Dad, we've got this. Not to give anything away, but we've got this thing, and I'm going to kill somebody." I'm like, "What do you mean you're going to kill somebody?" I'm like, he's like, "We've got this play, and it just sets me up to make such a block, and I can't wait to just drop the hammer on some kid, And he was disappointed he didn't get to run that this weekend, but we'll see.
That's super awesome.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for it.
I was wondering that too because I mean our division is pretty weak, and we've had no problem going through that. And with high scores, I've wondered how it's going to respond as you play a team like Belleville. But
yeah, well, we'll see. It's not like we've played bad teams. I mean, Fordson is Fordson is not the Fordson that they've been in years past. But they've always been a strong team. Heartland, Howell.
Northville was tough.
Northville was tough. I can, Northville. I can remember a couple years ago when we played there, where there was a muff punt that kind of cost us the game. Went in the end zone, got a safety. But back to Heartland and Howell, you can never, no matter how those teams are, you can never predict those games. I think it was it 3 years ago or something like that, where we needed to win our Howell game at the end of the season to make the playoffs, and Howell hadn't won a game. And they came in, and I want to say they hung like 20 on the scoreboard in the first quarter, and then we just couldn't overcome that. And that was a season ender. Yeah. That was a capstone for their season, but they're crosstown rivals. Those games are always going to be unpredictable, I think that, but I think that Brian Lemons and his amazing freaking staff are going to have a plan, and it's going to be well thought out. It's going to be well rehearsed, and it'll hopefully be well executed.
Can't wait. Noon on Saturday.
Yeah, totally. Do you remember? So you went to the Belleville game,
yeah?
Right? When we beat Belleville.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So one of the things in the game plan was like minimize the amount of time they have the ball.
They dominated the ball.
And one of the reasons why they dominated the ball, because they would send the play in, and then they wouldn't start the snap count until you were under 5 seconds. And so, run the clock as long as it's close. Run the clock the way you want to run the clock. And it's just little things like that I think we had coaching ability that Belleville didn't necessarily expect there. So we'll see. I hope Lemons doesn't listen to this and like kick me off the fucking sidelines. But
it won't be out until after next week. So
okay.
You're after this weekend.
Well, I hope I don't look foolish, right? So all good, man.
A little bit ago, we were talking about when you were on James Gray's podcast and like 2020, and as sports parents, we were all sitting on that uncertainty of back and forth. We're in, we're out, we're on rest, and
fucking hated that, man.
In the middle of it, and we're all caught up in our emotions. I remember getting an email from you running the BBFC, and I read this email and I just sat and cried. I'm not too proud to admit it, man. What has sports meant to you, and why is it so important? Why is this? We've talked about this for the last half hour. Why is it so important to you?
So backing up a little bit, I was I'll talk about my upbringing in house. So I was kind of a shithead kid. I was born in Wyandotte, Michigan, and then my parents moved around. And by the time I got back to Southeast Michigan, when I was like 10 years old, we had moved from Wyandotte to Bowling Green, Ohio, to Pensacola, Florida, to New Hampshire, to New York, to Connecticut, and then back to Michigan, all before I was 10. So I was never any place for more than a year or two, and didn't play any sports when I was a kid because there was never time to settle in, and you gotta have a comfort. And, kids, when you're having a hard time making friends, I didn't play organized football until my 8th grade year. And that was a year and a half after I was playing football at my uncle's farm, and shattered my femur. It horribly fucking shattered my femur. I mean, like passed out from the pain, shattered my femur, and drove my femur up into my pelvis. So my left leg was like 3 inches short. They told me this. I didn't see it because I was passing out. But my left leg was like 3 inches shorter than my right leg immediately after this happened. And so I spent like 3 or 4 weeks in the hospital in traction with my leg getting pulled straight by weights, which was horribly, horribly fucking painful. And then after that, I spent probably 6 weeks in a cast that went from the tips of my toes on my left foot up to my belly button and then down past my knee and my right leg with the requisite cutouts so I could do the bodily functions, right? So I spent a lot of time in that. And then after that, I was like, well, I got to fucking... I'm going to play football, and I'd like to say
even after this,
I'd like to say that I knew I needed to get back on that horse, but I was like, I didn't have any kind of motivation like that. I was like, I'm going to play football because I feel good, and what's the worst that can happen? I already broke my fucking femur, right? So in the interceding period of time, I went through some personal stuff with my family, and just to be a little bit vulnerable here. My mom attempted suicide and we almost lost the house and all this other stuff. And so I was turning into a real shithead kid. And then I had this coach, and he was a wrestling coach. His name was Mr. Ellis. He coached wrestling for Lincoln Park for a number of years. He was big in the wrestling's like a community, like a family. So regardless of where they're at. And so he was like, dude, I want you to try football. I want you to try wrestling. Let's get you doing something. I was like, okay, cool. I was thinking about doing it anyways. Let's figure it out. And so played football 8th grade, made tons of good friends. My best friend in the world, Joe Jones. I met him in 8th grade football when we had to do, it was preseason conditioning. He was like, okay, find somebody that's your size and fireman carry him for 100 yards. And I was like, you're about my size, dude. Let's go. And so met him. We literally carried each other up and down the field a few times, and we've been fast friends for now 40 years. Wow. And then so played football and wrestled all through high school, except for my senior year. My senior year, I didn't play anything because I decided I was going to go in the Marine Corps, and I was like, you know what? If I'm going to go in the Marine Corps, I'd rather get hammered before one of the high school games and sit in the stands and watch it. And honestly, that's my biggest fucking regret. Biggest regret. And so I was one of those kids that didn't know what I was capable of, from a physical standpoint. I've been 5'11.5" since I was about 13 years old. I've always been, not to pat myself on the back, but I've always been on the strong side. In the Marine Corps, when we got in the Marine Corps, I was always capable of, it wasn't anything for me to like saddle up 50 or 60 pounds on my back and go for 26 miles. I hated running. I still hate running. I just do it to keep from getting fat. But that's when I started like realizing that, I'm capable way more physically than I thought of. And so played a season of football in the Marine Corps for our unit team, which was like, what's that movie with Adam Sandler when they're playing the prison guards?
Yeah, Longest Yard.
Longest Yard is exactly what it was like. It was like, almost no officiating. It's okay if you're punching somebody in the pile. And so I always lived with a little bit of the regret that I hadn't played more sports, or that I hadn't tried harder, And my dad was always in my ass, oh, you could be a great basketball player. I'm like, fuck that. I don't want to play basketball. He's like, you just need to do a little bit more and you'll be a great football player. I'm like, hey, I'm fine, And so probably part of me pushing kids and not letting them accept, their own self-imposed mediocrity is a reaction to the mediocrity that I imposed on myself as a kid, and regretting that. And so since I got out of the Marine Corps and went to college, I played intramural sports in college as much as I could. I've always lifted weights. I've always stayed in shape. I've always pushed myself to continue to find out where those limits and bounds are. I've done, do you know what Go Ruck is? Go Ruck Challenge. Yeah. I've done a half a dozen Go Rucks. I used to do this thing called the Baton Memorial Death March out in New Mexico, which was a 26.2 full marathon in the deserts of White Sands, New Mexico, with a 40-pound pack, and you get about 3,000 feet of elevation change during it, and it's all through this like ankle deep sand, and it's horrible. Wow. Yeah, it is horrible. But it is also horribly fun, because it's you find out that you're capable of doing that.
Yes. Yeah.
And you find out that this is not as bad as I would have thought it would be. But it's interesting though, as I talk about this, and I heard somebody, I think it was a recent Joe Rogan podcast where he had said, these guys that train for all these MMA fights and they're all gung ho and then they get ready to fight and they're just like, what the fuck am I doing here? And you get that moment of creeping self-doubt and then the bell rings. And so similar, you train your ass off and you're like, I got this. And then you're waiting for that starting gun. You're like, what the fuck am I doing here? I'm about to go through, fuck it, let's go. And then you go. But
because once the gun goes off,
once the gun goes off, you're committed. And so one of the ways I motivate myself, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to do this. And, this is my goal. And I'd make sure everybody knew about it. That way, I'm like, even if the self-doubt creeps in and that voice, that Dean voice in the back of my head,
put it out there.
I put it out there. So I don't want to look like a fucking idiot in front of all these people I put it out with. So that's a motivator. But
it's a powerful tactic, actually.
Absolutely powerful tactic is for holding yourself accountable. And it's so coming back to you sports. One of the things I'll do this week in practice, our last week in practice, is at the beginning of the season, I had each one of these kids write down their goal. Didn't look at it. Didn't read it. Right? I said, we'll come back to this at the end of the season. Here we are, end of the season. I'm going to read it out loud, and I'm going to ask them if they hit their goal. And for some kids, they're going to be like, some kids are going to be like, fuck yeah, you know?
Yeah.
But that's a matter of accountability. So it's kind of a long-winded way to answer your question. What does sports mean to me? It means more to me now. And that's probably from having seen, I feel like I'm ranting, so feel free to cut me off if you need me to. But from having seen what it's done for my kids, my daughter, who's a sophomore out of Ohio University, was for 4 years an all-state powerlifter. And I got involved in powerlifting through Coach Lemons when he was at Whitmore Lake High School. and he needed a powerlifting judge. And I'm like, I don't know. What do you need me to go lift stuff? He's like, no, you sit through like an hour class in the morning, and then you just sit at your platform and you judge. And so one of the things I saw there was this, the state tournament was at Whitmore Lake. And so I was on the women's platform. And as the women, as it comes down to the end and the women are doing their lifts, I was on the platform for heavyweight women, right? And so there was this girl there who, if you looked at her, you would not consider her an athlete. She was probably about 5'8". She probably weighed about 300 pounds. Not probably, I'm going to guess she probably gets the typical shit that kids, of that body mass get when they're in school. But she got up on that fucking deadlift platform and she deadlifted 470 pounds. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And you could see the confidence just fucking, I'm getting a little misty-eyed talking about the confidence poured into her. And at that moment, she was a fully actualized, super confident human being, and I was just like, that is absolutely amazing. So my daughter, Lemon's brought the powerlifting program and started powerlifting in our amazing gym at the high school. And so my daughter drank the Kool-Aid on that. And so she was an all-state powerlifter for 4 years. And she was number 4, number 3, number 2 in the state. And as she set these school records and as she moved up in standings at the end of the season, I saw what it did to her confidence, and I saw I saw her, with a little bit of a swagger for weeks following, those accomplishments, and I see, when I see my son Mason, he was playing in his last youth varsity game, 8th grade, and he was on the kickoff team, and so we kicked off, and I saw him just fold the ball. It was the only thing between the ball carrier and a touchdown was my son, and so that's when you get nervous, right? And so I saw him just hit this kid devastatingly, folded this kid in half, and then he stood up and he just walked off the field. And that swagger, and I see what happens for my kids, but more importantly, I see other kids, because not to pat myself in the back here, but my kids are fortunate. We have an intact family. Yeah. We have a roof over our head. We have 3 squares a day. But there are kids out there, and this might be what kind of brought a tear to your eye in that email I sent. There are kids out there that need sports way more than sports needs them. Yeah. There are kids that without learning to be part of a team would just be a loner. There are kids out there without, the positive male influence in their life wouldn't have a positive male influence in their life. I've, over the course of the last 10 years or so, I've coached kids that have had, police interactions, where, I have to talk to some officers like every couple of weeks and make sure they're not being a complete shithead. I've had kids where, from broken families where social services have reached out, kids where, they show up to the field, they don't have all their equipment because mom and dad who are divorced, my shoulder pads are in my dad's car and he says it's my mom's problem, my mom, and that. And so you try to give them that stability. And those are the kids that need sports way more than sports needs them, because that will lift them up and hopefully, put them on a course in a direction that they might not otherwise be on. So,
well, and for those kids, and I was one of those kids. I had an abusive dad. It's one of those things, and to be around, to have positive role model coaches, like you said, to be coached, to have somebody that cares about you and cares about your success, hold you accountable. I love how it's like shake somebody's hands, look them in the eye, teaching them like life lessons.
Yeah,
it's just huge. It changes that course, and again, I'm a big component of people are our biggest resources. People can come in and change our lives, and especially people that come in and say, "I believe in you."
Yeah, absolutely, because they might not have heard that. I was one of the kids probably are sick of hearing it, so it's probably not one of those things that sticks anymore. But I believe in you. You just got to be in yourself. Believe in yourself. Yep. And a lot of kids don't believe in themselves. They don't believe themselves. They don't believe themselves capable. But there's no more satisfying thing watching some kid who you're coaching, whether it's lacrosse or football or wrestling. Football, when you're trying to teach a kid how to make a tackle, and he can't make a tackle, and then one day he just fucking pancakes your best running back, and he stands up, he's like, "The fuck was that? Did I do that?" It's a great thing, and and it builds that confidence, and that confidence translates into, and they carry that confidence off the field and into the classroom. They carry that confidence off the field and into their home life, and hopefully that stays with them. And hopefully they continue to have those role models in their life and the people that hold them accountable, because without accountability, I mean, you get that kid that thinks he can run fast and he doesn't really run fast. Right.
I had this young man that I've coached since like first, second grade, and he's turned into an incredible athlete through basketball. And it's one of those things, though, he's been through some tough mental stuff, and he doesn't respond well like to adversity. Yeah. And we had to go through some tough stuff, just tough shit this year. And I remember this one moment, like he literally cost us the game because he reacted. We were up by 2. He literally got fouled. He's our best free throw shooter. The kid was hanging on his back. Foul called. We're going to the free throw line. Yeah. He reacted. I'm sorry, we were up by 1 because he reacted and he threw the kid. Yeah. Got a technical foul. Oh, yeah. They automatically get 2 points in 8th grade. Instead of going to the free throw line, they automatically get 2 points. And he was kicked out of the game. So he still got free throws.
One hell of a reaction.
I had one kid on the bench, and he was our worst free throw shooter. And he had to come off the bench and shoot the free throw. So he missed the free throw. We lost the game by 1 point. And I remember his mom saying, "It's okay. He did this to you, and it was okay to react." And I said, "No,
not okay. Yeah,
not okay." And and it was a tough conversation. His mom's there, but I'm like, yeah. And this is a tough lesson. And he was shattered, and he was he was crying. He was shattered, and it was cool though, because his mom messaged me afterwards and thanked me for that message and for talking to him. But then she said he wasn't upset because he lost the game. He wasn't upset because he let his teammates down. He was upset because he disappointed you. And to be like, to get that feeling as a coach.
Absolutely. I would have rather heard that he was upset because he let
for sure. Yeah.
But that's upset because he let you down. Then the next step in the kid's emotional evolution is, letting the greater team down. Right. Yes. Because that's more important. We're just, when we're coaches, we're just leaders on the team. You're not playing. When I first asked my kids this season, who do you play for? Some of them are like Bulldogs. I'm like, that's technically right. Who do you play for? They're like Coach Ditto. I'm like, fuck no.
No. Yeah.
I'm your coach. But you guys play for each other on the field.
Yes.
And as long as they take that forward in the next 4 years, the kids that are in 8th grade right now, they'll enjoy success.
Yes. And good point. Yeah. It was just a sense of kind of knowing you made an impact on somebody, or an impact on a kid, when he's like, when you can say something to them and their words carry, even though their parents like saying it's okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'll since I'm still coaching, I'll remain, but there's often times where, there's been times in the sidelines where, we're doing something and the dad is yelling from the sidelines. Dad's not a coach. Dad's yelling from the sidelines to do something other than what we're teaching him to do. I had years back, I had a dad whose son was playing linebacker, and he was a pretty good athlete. And he was yelling in blitz, blitz, and his son blitzed when he shouldn't have blitzed. And, if I remember correctly, because it's probably like 3 or 4 years ago, and the kid's since moved out of district, but he blitzed. The outcome of the play wasn't of any consequence. But it's like, go to the fence. I told one of my assistants, go to the fence and tell him to shut his fucking mouth. Because that's not. I don't come in. Don't undermine what the coaches are trying to do. You might not agree. With the coaches, but the quote unquote bad coaches will eventually self-select out. Not that I consider myself a good coach, but the bad coaches will select themselves out. But when you have coaches that are holding your kids accountable, let your kid be held accountable. Yeah. There's a lot of times where
it's about that accountability.
It's about the accountability. Yeah.
Because there's a pattern in life, and again, sports is such a parallel to life in general. But if you keep having excuses for why you react a certain way, if there's always a reason, it's it just carries over to everything.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You can find an excuse to get out of it.
And there's valid excuses, right?
There are, but sometimes, excuses. Everybody has an excuse.
At the end of the day, what does it matter, though?
Yeah, it's about finding. And let me pause for a second. So, from a work standpoint, I don't believe in this, but from a sports standpoint and a motivation standpoint, I believe in this. Which is sometimes you got to find a way. And from a management technique at work, find a way isn't the best management technique. It sucks to be honest with you. But in sports, there's find a way, because oftentimes that find a way is just this is called grit and coffee, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you get a little bit more grit.
Yep.
You know, but grit is one of those things, you know, if you or I could figure out how to teach grit, we'd be fucking billionaires, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolute billionaires.
You can't teach that though.
You can't teach that. You have to, well, you know, let's talk about that. Cause can you teach that? I think you can, but I think the process is so arduous, and so time consuming that I think it's almost impractical to teach it unless somebody like goes all in. Cause honestly, you know, if we think about grit, you know, where I learned grit was Marine Corps boot camp.
Yep.
And so that's 12 weeks of getting your ass kicked.
Weeks. Yep.
12 weeks of getting your ass kicked. And so, 12 weeks of getting your ass kicked. And so when I went to boot camp, I think our platoon started with like 84 people and we graduated 53. I think it was like 53, 54, something like that. And so that was 53 or 54 people that learned grit and 30 some odd people that didn't learn grit and determination.
Yep.
You learn how to gut it out. And sometimes that's trying to fly under the radar, but there's a little bit of grit to that flying under the radar when appropriate, you know, and not skylining yourself. But if you think about how you teach grit, it's about experiencing something.
It is, yeah.
And it has to be kind of traumatic, right?
Yep.
It has in maybe, you know, learning, and that's physical grit and, you know, determination and morale and motivation, but maybe emotional grit. Like, are your parents still around? If you don't mind me asking.
My mom is, yeah.
Your mom is, okay. So emotional grit, when my dad passed away, you know, I'd lost my grandparents. But when my dad passed away, you know, that was fucking devastating. And in that experience, as traumatic as it was, I think taught me a lot of emotional grit, you know, how to get through that. You know, when my mom passed away, you know, more emotional grit lessons. You know, I felt for the first time in my life, like the safety net had been removed because I didn't have a parent to talk to. And so, you know, grit and learning grit is an experiential thing that is time consuming, traumatic, but transformative, you know. And the downside is as people go through those transformative experiences to learn grit, sometimes they don't fucking make it. I mean, you know, think about, I know people that have lost parents that are years and years and years ago that are still mourning and have never been right. I know people that, and not that you should ever be right, you know, your life changes, but, you know, people that don't make it through Marine Corps boot camp, you know, they didn't learn the lesson of grit there. People that go through other traumatic experiences and don't come out the other side a better person. So I think you can teach grit, but I think the cost is too high for a lot of people, you know? Yeah.
And even as I started my business and it was like, I was having so many challenges, you know, 8 months in, I'm like, is this really worth it even to continue doing? It was remembering like all those times where I had my back against the wall. And that was where I responded the best. Yeah. That was where I had my biggest comeback or my biggest, you know, growth.
Yeah. Where you don't have an opportunity to, you know, what are you going to do if you're talking about business? You know, you put all your savings and investment in, and if I tap out, that's all gone and wasted. But your back's against the wall. What the fuck are you going to do? Lose all that? It's either sink or swim at that point.
Right.
You know, and I think, and that's transformative, and that's when you learn grit and come up out of that. But think about how many people you know who have thrown in the towel, you know.
So I have a client who been around for 40 years in the third generation, the son, who I now work with. He got taught grit the hard way, but when he was hired as a young man, he came, he took his opportunity for granted. Yeah. He was the son of the, you know, of the owner, and he came in, got high, like did all these things, right? And the dad fired him.
Yeah. Well, good for the dad.
It was like, it's time. We have a mutual understanding. It's time for you to leave. Yeah. And so he had to go through several years of learning life on his own in that grit. And now he's back and he's the next generation of this company. And it's going to be a great company based off, but he had to go through this grit experience to get that.
Yeah. There's, so as you're talking, there's an interesting, and I saved it on my phone, and I saved it on my phone so I could reference it when I talk at the BBFC banquet that's going to happen in a few weeks at the end of the season. And I'm gonna completely slaughter it, but it's something of, I hope I had the strength to allow you to feel pain, and I hope that pain brought you wisdom, and I hope that wisdom allows you to understand how to serve others the best way you possibly can when they need serving, or something to that effect. And it's just this absolutely aspirational quote, but it calls to mind the fact that, you know, if anybody can captain a fucking ship in easy seas, right? But the good captain is the one who can sail through the storm, right? But you never get that experience until you go through the storm, right? And everybody has to experience that to a certain extent, that storm in their life. And whether it's getting your ass kicked in sports, or whether it's, Marine Corps boot camp, or whether it's starting your own business, you experience that storm, and you know that you can get through that storm. And the lessons that you take with that, like, let me ask you, if you were going to start your own business now, if this is great and that business is running itself, you're going to start your own business now, you've probably learned so many fucking lessons.
Oh, absolutely.
That it would be a cakewalk for you.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. And then you would hit a road bump. You'd be like, I'm not going to worry about that, because I know how to resolve this, or I know this will resolve itself, or, all I need to do is, push this lever in the business or this lever in the business, and the ship will right itself. Right. So people can't hide from arduous experiences, and you can't hide people from arduous experiences. Growth is uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had so many people on this show, and I think a common thing comes down to, like, how do you perceive your challenges and your adversity? Mm-hmm. How do you perceive your weaknesses?
Yeah.
How do you perceive your differences?
Mm-hmm.
Are they like something you can't overcome?
Mm-hmm.
Are they, or are they big blessings for you? Are they opportunities to grow? Are they you look at the COVID experience, and what did we get out of that? What did we learn? And,
oh my God, you had another hour in the studio.
I know, right?
Holy cow. The COVID experience, that was, so like everybody else, let's rewind back to March of 2020, when everybody thought literally the world was about to come to an end.
Yeah.
And so this is where I'm going to sound a little like weird, but so I'd been following COVID in like the international press for a few weeks, and I was like, this is getting out of control. I went and I bought a bunch of canned food and, ammunition.
Yeah.
And so I was ready to go, and my wife thought I was fucking crazy, but that's how much I was worried about it, that I was investing like hundreds and hundreds of dollars in canned food and ammunition and like a couple dozen 5-gallon jugs of water and whatnot, because I didn't know what was going to go on.
Yeah.
And then everything shut down. And so there was a lot of trepidation about the uncertainty. If you think back to like March 14th, when the governor shut the state, and work, oh my God, what are we going to do for work? I had friends that are like, everything's coming to an end. I'm going to lose my job. We can't do this, blah, blah, blah. How am I going to put food on the table? But the challenge of it, I was like, okay, so my caution and my conservative approach to making sure my family's going to be okay, weighed that out. But the time that I got to spend with my family in the next 3 months was amazing.
Yep.
I'd sit up with my son. This is going to sound horrible. I'd sit up with my son still fucking 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning playing Call of Duty, or, playing guitar. And, it was the first and only time that my kids went on a hike with me in like one of the rec areas, in like Pinckney rec area or something like that.
Yeah.
And the time we spent together, that was a growth opportunity, but it was obviously an uncomfortable one, but all the challenges that come with it, you decide what is important to you, family for me, is the most important thing. And then how do you activate against that, and how do you protect that, and how do you consolidate that? How is that your primary focus? If I think about another recent challenge, I work in advertising, and so our budget had been cut from our client, and so we had to lay off a number of people. I was lucky enough to be tagged for what they call redeployment, which is to go work in another client in our large agency. But the clock was ticking. I had to find a place to land in I think I had like 8 weeks. So, but I didn't treat that like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I knuckled down. I drove into my contacts throughout the company, beat the bush, and ended up having a couple of different offers, And so, the curveballs that life throws you are not about, it's not that you get knocked down. It's about getting the fuck back up.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And you don't lose until you don't get back up. And sometimes you might get a standing 8 count because your bell got rung.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, but if you get knocked down, you get back up. And by getting back up, you get gritty.
Yes.
Right.
my son had Sean McGraw as a coach for a couple
Yeah.
years.
Oh, I fucking love Sean McGraw.
Sean
Is
McGraw.
somebody you need to have on this fucking podcast.
You know what? I need to reach out to Sean. My brother has known Sean for years, and as Jackson was going through elementary school, he's like, my buddy Sean is a coach. Hopefully Jackson gets him as a coach. And first, he got to coach him for 2 years. Before he went to Lakeland there.
Yeah.
But he used to always say first off, he always best motivational speeches ever.
Oh my God.
Again, like ready to run out of the field and like do whatever.
Oh yeah.
But he used to always say you're either winning or you're learning.
Yep.
You're either winning or you're learning. And I say that all the time now. It's like one of those things that I got from coach, right?
Yeah.
Like you're either winning or you're learning.
Yeah.
The only time we're losing is when we repeat the same mistake over and over and over again. We never learn from it.
Yes, absolutely. You know, so it's funny. Talk about Sean McGraw for a second. And Sean, I hope you see this, man. Love you, buddy. But when I first met Sean McGraw, I was like, this guy's full of shit. There's no way somebody's this like tuned up and like positive and whatnot. Then I got to spend some time with him. I'm like, oh my God, I fucking love this guy because he is. It's not a facade. He is literally the most upbeat, motivational, like can't keep a man down kind of attitude that I've ever met in anybody in my life. I would take a bullet for Sean McGraw, and I would follow Sean McGraw into combat. And granted, we're a couple of fat old guys going on. But yeah, Sean's a great guy. But he's absolutely right. You know, you're either winning or you're learning. It's when you repeat the same mistakes. You know, when you haven't evolved. You know, from whatever mistakes you've made, that you suffer, and then that's when you're losing. But unfortunately, you know, people don't learn from their mistakes, you know, both as individuals, as a society, you know, as, businesses oftentimes don't learn from the mistakes that they make, you know, and that's unfortunate. You know, I think you sometimes get, you know, a little bit of a different perspective on some of the problems that you're facing, but then go right back to the way you've been doing it, which is a problem. And it's both individually and, you know, not to talk about society as a larger thing, but society and businesses, you know? Yeah.
Well, and like, how do you handle getting a loss? You know, and that's another thing that you learn from that too. And even from sports, if you're playing sports, you learn a lot from taking losses.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
But like, you talked about you learned more from sports in like the retrospect, and that was kind of the same for me. I got caught my 7th grade year of basketball, and I just was like, oh no, the coaches don't know me. It's a popularity contest, blah, 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 blah. I had all these excuses. I didn't go and take the chance to get better. Yeah. I didn't go, I did work on my game a lot because I love basketball, but I wasn't strategically working on my game to go and make the team. And I never tried out for another basketball team again throughout my whole entire career. And that's a big regret because I play basketball now at a high level at 43. You know, like it's one of those things.
And how much better could you be if you would have had that grit in you when you were
I wish that I knew about weightlifting. I wish that I knew about so many different things.
Oh, for sure.
And again, realizing your full potential. It's like now, it's like I'm a much better athlete now than I was in high school or even in my 20s. Yeah. You know, but I was always capable of that, and I was younger and faster probably then if I would have did the right things.
Oh, for sure, for sure. You know, I think you know. In terms of handling losses, you know, you can't be, so first off, you can't be afraid to lose, you know? Yeah. You have to, you know, if you come in and you approach something from a position of fear as your primary, as you know, I'm going to go play football, but I'm afraid, you know, of losing, or I'm going to wrestle, but I'm afraid of losing, you know, or I'm going to apply for this job, but I'm afraid, what if they say no? What is the, you know, at the end of the day, and this is like a yardstick by which I measure, you know, how bad something is for me personally, is at the end of the day, does my family still love me? And is anybody shooting at me, quite literally shooting at me, you know, because I've been, you know, my family, I hope will always love me, and I hope I don't ever do anything, you know, either intentional or unintentional is all that, but I've been shot at before, you know, a few times. You know, thankfully to no effect, but let me tell you how terrifying that can be. Yeah. And because you know, the potential of that going badly has a high negative connotation. You fucking die, right? Yep. So as long as my family loves me and nobody's trying to kill me, nobody's shooting me, everything will be fine. So throw caution to the wind. You know, I had this is some friends of mine who've moved into the Brighton area not long ago. Name's Mike and Sarah. They're from Canada. So they're fucking hockey players, right? Yeah. Their kids play hockey. And so I got to be really good friends with them. They're the best people in the world, salt of the earth. So Mike last year was like, hey, we need people for our hockey team. Do you play hockey? And I'm like, I've never put skates on in my fucking life. But he was like, no, come on, let's try it. I'm like, you know what? fuck it. I'm going to play hockey. So I've been playing 40. I'm in my second season now of 40 and up beer league hockey. So the first time I got on skates, I'd gone and I'd done sticks and pucks over here at Kensington. And that was like an hour, and then I had a game.
Yeah.
Right. And so the first game, I fucking ankled my way over to the opposing bench, and I was like, hey, listen, guys, I got to tell you, I've never played hockey before. They're like, what do you mean never? And I'm like, and so I told the opposing team, I'm like, this is my first time ever playing hockey. I don't know the fucking rules except how to not be offsides. But if I run into you,
it's not aggressive.
It's not aggressive. It's just because I couldn't fucking stop. And so long story short, played, I want to say like 20 games last season. And I've only had a chance to play one game this season, scored a goal. Not that it was a great goal. The fucking goalie thought me completely incapable. And so I took the puck up by the blue line. I had a shot on the net, and I took the shot on the net, and the goalie was drinking his fucking water, and then realized that this fucking rookie had taken a shot and fell on the puck and couldn't cover it. But don't be afraid to try. The moral of the story there is don't be afraid to do new things. You're gonna look foolish, and you're gonna fall down. You're gonna fail. And I spent a lot of time on my ass, and the guys I play hockey with are like, Dean, you did a great pirouette out there. The figure skating lessons are paying off. I'm like, did you like that? But don't be afraid. The negative consequence that you're going to experience for trying something new is usually pretty fucking low. And usually it's internalized. It's like, I could be afraid that I'm going to look like an asshole out there playing hockey, and I did. But you know what? Fuck it. I play hockey now. So. Good on me, right?
That's something that you can talk about, like you can say, like you did this, but it's a whole learning lesson. It's a motivation. I told you why I do this show. It's a motivation for people because you go out and you try new things.
Yeah.
You learn from it. Your first time skating on skates and you look like an asshole. You feel like an asshole. You feel like an idiot.
Yeah, sore as fuck.
But now can you skate?
No, I can skate better, but but I'm playing with guys like I'm playing with two guys from Canada, and they've been skating since they were like 3 fucking years old. They can literally skate circles around me. Everybody else has been skating like 10, 15, 20 years, and they can all skate circles with me. But you know what? I go out there and I fucking truck down that ice and I will pursue that puck like nobody else. I don't always get there in time, but it is what it is. It's a fun time. I think I'm thankful to have some guys that are showing me a lot of grace, but it's interesting because there's in the 40 over beer league. Do you play hockey?
No. 40
over beer league at Kensington can be pretty fucking competitive. There's a guy who plays in that league, and I'm not going to say what team he was on, but he played for an NHL team, and he is notorious for having like checked somebody famous and then took him out. Like missed the rest of the game. And so this guy's like 50, he's fat, he's old, but he's still a giant on skates. And to see this guy like just effortlessly, there's guys that played like hockey at like Ferris and Northern Michigan, and they're all old just like me, but they're just skaters, and here I am like ankling around. But I think one of the things is humility. I don't mind going out there and looking like an asshole because and I'm not going to say I don't care what people think of me because everybody cares to a certain extent what people think of you. But I care more about the new experience and what I can get from that than I do about what people might think. And so have you ever heard the story, or the story, not the saying, is that 1,000 geniuses die every day undiscovered by themselves or anybody else because they never tried.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so if you think about that, if some people have never tried to play the piano, but maybe they're a savant for the piano, or some people, I don't like math, but maybe you just didn't get the right nudge and maybe you're great at math, simple things like that. Or maybe you're a talented hockey player, but you never put on skates. Maybe you're a talented football player, but your parents didn't have the money to register you for football or something like that, and maybe you have a propensity for some other great contribution to the society or something, but you just never tried, you just never tried. And so realizing that, fuck it, try it, throw yourself into it all the way,
And everybody can relate with being new, even if it was when they were 3.
Oh yeah. And that newness is a cycle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're the new kid in school when you're in kindergarten, and then in 5th grade you're the big bad guy with the swagger.
Yeah.
And then you leave and you go to Maltby, 4th grade. 5th and 6th grades at Maltby. You're the new guy at Maltby. Then the next year you're the older guy at Maltby, and then you leave Maltby, and then you go to Scranton. 7th grader, you're the newbie. 8th grader, you got the big swagger. And then you go to high school.
Yeah.
And now you're fucking low man on the totem pole. And then all of a sudden you become a senior. And you're a dude, right?
Yep.
And then you graduate. And that's where you really get kicked in the dick, because you go on to whatever's next. And you're a freshman in college and nobody gives a fuck. And then you go through and you're either freshman in college, you go in the military or trade school, and you're the new guy. You're an apprenticeship at trades. You're private in the private or private first class in the military. You're a freshman in college. And then you eventually go through another 4-year cycle, and then you get out of there, and then you start at the bottom of the rung again.
You're always new,
and you're always the new guy. And the sooner people realize that cycle is in perpetuity, all the way up until we're the new people in the fucking nursing home, right? Then why wouldn't you try something new? Why wouldn't you? Why do you care? Because you're going to go back to being the new guy. You might as well just throw yourself into whatever's new.
And again, we can all relate to it.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
Going back to sports, I had this client who was a D1 football player, and he talked about, I was always the dude, right?
Yeah.
In high school, you're the dude.
Yeah.
If you're playing D1 football, you were probably your best player in high school. And he's like, I just showed up.
Yeah.
Then you get to college, D1, everybody there's the dude.
Yeah.
And they work out, and they eat well, and they, they're doing all the things.
Yeah.
And they have a better mentality than me.
Yeah. Yeah. But he was a D1 player.
Yeah.
So, but he never did the hard work to he just showed up and he got to D1.
I mean, he did hard work, but he was like, I didn't know what hard work was
until
you get there, and it's a whole other level. I felt like I worked hard, but he went to a small school where he just was the example for what was hard work.
Yeah.
So when you are the example, and you're setting the bar.
Oh yeah.
You think that I'm the bar, and then you go there and you realize the bar is
way higher. Or that's everybody's bar. Instead of everybody trying to get over your bar.
Yes.
Everybody's bar is there.
That's entry level.
Yeah, that's table stakes. That's the reason why you're there. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been I've seen kids like that who are naturally gifted athletes who are just absolute studs, and then without having to put in a lot of work. And then they manage to get a college scholarship, and it's like, holy fuck, man, the expectations are different,
Yep.
And that's bothersome, because you think about, if you think about somebody who can, go get a scholarship without having to put in a shit ton of effort, shit, imagine if you'd have actually hit the fucking weight room every fucking day. Imagine if you'd have spent more time studying film, you'd be at Alabama or fucking Michigan or something, and I guess the level of success and the judgment of success there is, maybe a little bit of a different thing, but that's not a kid living up to his potential. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't live up to. Not that I probably have. I shouldn't say
we're all
probably.
next.
I most certainly have unrealized potential. Let me acknowledge that to the camera.
Yeah.
But you know what? If I find some place where I don't have unrealized potential, I'd like to think I lean in, and try to find that. And whether that's putting on a pair of skates for the first fucking time, or trying to learn a new song in the guitar, or going to football coaching clinics.
Yep.
Try to realize that potential. Yeah.
It's constant growth. And to hear, because I think that was perfect end. I had a college professor that said we're always growing. Mm-hmm. He was like, the day that you think you've learned everything, I highly recommend you go to your cabinet, pull out the gun, put it in your mouth, and pull the trigger, because you're dead anyways. And I was like, that's the most graphic thing ever, but I'll always remember it. I think that's the biggest learning lesson I had from college.
That'll stick with you. But you know what? He's right, man. Because if you think you know everything, you're lost.
Yep.
Because there's so much more. I mean, if you think about the evolution of business and marketing, and just speaking of my industry, advertising, that is in a constant evolution, from, metrics and targeting and content, and, the transformation over the last few years into consumer experience versus product. It's more about the experience than it is about the product, and the experience and the brand are inexorably linked. That's new evolution. But you have folks that are still like, the copy and the creative is it. And yeah, great. But now there's more than that. If you think about anything, if you stop growing, you start dying, man. Mm-hmm. Maybe not to the extent, you might as well go start a shotgun, but, it's absolutely true. You look at all the studies where, what's a great way to keep your brain elastic as you get older? Is to learn a language, to play a musical instrument, to continue to learn something.
Yep.
To continue to read, to continue to engage and experience new things. And that's what kind of old proofs you. That's what kind of old proofs you. And maybe we should figure out a way to package that up and make $1 billion. But back to your point, you need to have some grit to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
You need to not be afraid to take the risk, to take the chance, to be vulnerable and humble, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You open yourself to be coachable along the way.
Yeah. God, coachable. You absolutely have to be coachable, man. Everybody needs to be coachable, because everybody can do better. And that, outside perspective, that's kind of humbling, even like from a work perspective, I'm pretty far along in my career. You get feedback from your boss and sometimes it stings, and it's like, but I should take that and I should drink some of my own fucking Kool-Aid and be coachable, and, kids that are, hey, why you should have done this, you should have done that. Oh, well, it's like, no, you're not being coachable right now. Or even the kid that, you spend 7 weeks teaching him how to tackle and he still uses improper form. That's not, I hate to say it, but that's not a coachable kid. Because they're not applying the lessons they learn, and maybe they're content.
There's some great athletes out there that are just not coachable.
Oh yeah, totally. But why is it? Kind of going back to a little bit what we said. At some point, somebody, and they might be a great athlete, but somebody said, you're a great fucking athlete. You don't need to listen to anything except what you're doing, right?
Yep.
Bullshit. Everybody needs to be fucking coached. You see those, who's the guy that shoved that camera person walking off the field, NFL game last week? He's one of those guys. He's one of those knuckleheads that I can't remember his name, but he's one of those knuckleheads that somebody at some point told him, you're the greatest, you don't have to do anything.
Yep.
And he gets himself ejected from a fucking game and then he shoves a cameraman. That motherfucker needs to be coachable. Somebody needs to sit that motherfucker down and say, hey, listen, you need to listen to outside perspective. And if he doesn't want to, then, maybe the coach should figure
One of a couple of things will happen with that type of person though, is like, they'll learn their lessons and they'll get their grit, right?
Right.
They'll learn, they'll adjust, they'll grow. Mm-hmm. Or they'll be like,
or they
victim.
Won't. Yeah.
It's everybody else's fault.
Yeah.
They put me in this situation. They did this.
Yeah.
They took this away from me. The
victim.
They.
Oh, the victim mentality is so disgusting to me, because there's, certainly, there's people that will throw you a bad hand of cards to play, right?
Yeah.
There's people that will unnecessarily bust your chops, that'll, introduce unnecessary drama, but it's not it's not that, it's how you react to that. And it's the opportunity to take that. And sometimes it takes some like mental jujitsu to take that momentum and just turn it and then slam it into the ground. But, you're never a product of your circumstances completely. There's always opportunity to take your circumstances and do something, but the victim mentality is so, and we could go another 2 hours talking about politics. The victim mentality is reinforced oftentimes in our society. It's not what you've done. It's the hand that you've been dealt. And so but just in trying to encapsulate it real quick, the victim mentality assumes that you don't have the ability to overcome those circumstances.
Yes.
The victim mentality says that you're a victim and you will never be anything more than a victim.
Yep.
That you don't have the grit, you don't have the intelligence, you don't have the determination to overcome whatever has been handed you. And that's bullshit. That is absolute bullshit. Unless somebody's putting a bullet in your head, you can just about overcome anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But, victim mentality is really high fashion these days. So,
well, when you put it that way, it sounds like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
But it's easier sometimes to blame other people than to look at yourself in the mirror, because
that's
things.
Yeah.
When you realize that you have ownership of everything in your life, that hurts. And now knowledge is half the power, is half the power, right? But now you have a choice of, do I fix it or do I continue going on and blaming everybody else for it?
Yeah. Because you know what, having to sit with knowing that, you can fix it, but you're choosing not to. I can't imagine the stomach churning anxiety that fucking causes, I mean, I'm not one to sit with, I need to fix this and, how am I going to fix it? I like to take the bull by the horns, but I can't imagine what that feels like, to look yourself in the mirror, know that whatever problem you're dealing with is you own, and that you have steps to take to overcome it. And those steps, let me acknowledge, those steps might not be easy, but there are steps to take, but you choose and to be paralyzed with that anxiety, you know, it breaks my heart for people that have to, that deal with that, but it takes grit, you know.
It takes grit.
Yeah. Yeah.
To end this and bring this whole entire point home, I think I've talked to so many people with like traumas, right?
Yeah.
Almost all of us have some sort of a trauma, but like I've talked to so many different people about their traumas, and there are one of two responses I get. And it's the same. I'm this way because of.
Yeah.
Whether negative or positive.
Yeah.
Either I'm a dirtbag because of all these things that happened. My dad was a dirtbag. I grew up poor. I grew up all these things. Or I do all these great things. I coach kids. I mentor people. I lead people. I inspire people because of these things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's a difference between, you know, the one side of the spectrum is a victim mentality. I'm that way because, you know, dad was a dirtbag. But it's going back to the transformative trauma, you know, and even for teams, you know, I've said this before. I think I read it in a book, so I don't want to own the quote, but there's nothing that builds team cohesiveness like going through the shit together. Like shared trauma builds team cohesiveness, right? Because once you get on the other side of whatever that shared trauma is, you know that who you can count on and who you can't count on. And that builds a cohesive, it builds a cohesive team. But at the same time, going back to, you know, to learn grit, like I said, you can learn it, but the cost is high, both from an emotional standpoint and a time standpoint. And that's, you know, unfortunately, some people don't have to pay that cost. That cost is imposed on them, but they see that they somehow get through that as a growth opportunity, you know? Yeah.
Huge, man.
So let's figure out how to package up some trauma that can give people grit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, package it. We'll sell it.
Here's your package of trauma.
Experience.
7 years, the next 7 weeks are going to suck, but you know, week 8, you're going to be a bad motherfucker, right?
Love it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you. Take care, everyone.